So every couple or a patient who is undergoing IVF treatment should know that the IVF successful rate is very low, and it actually varies because of certain factors. And these factors would be like the age, first of all, in women. So like those couple or those women who are less than 30 years of age, that is, or in an age group of 25 to 30, so for them, the successful pregnancy rates for IVF is only 60%. Going IVF pregnancy, then it is only 60 people who are actually going to get pregnant with IVF. And in the age group of 30 and 35, again the success rate drops to 40%, 40 to 50%. And by the time a woman reaches to her age of 40, then the successful pregnancy rates of IVF is less than 30. And more than 40 years of age group, the success rate is simply less than 10%. So why this happens? So to understand this, we should know what are the factors which are actually affecting the success rates of IVF pregnancy. So the first factor would be the gametes, that is the egg quality in females and the sperm quality in males. So here, to make a point, we are not talking about the quantity, that is the number of sperms or the number of eggs, because obviously when the number of sperms or the number of eggs is less, we suggest IVF. So we are talking here about so that is why the quantity of the sperm or egg is very important. Now, why does this quantity of this egg and sperm is really important? Because we know that in or during IVF or ICSI, that is called as intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So during this process, what we do inside our lab is we inject one sperm into one egg. So when the quality of the egg or the sperm is good, it gets fertilized. So if it gets fertilized, then the success rate of IVF pregnancy there itself goes high. So first we should understand these factors that are important for IVF successful pregnancy. So one is, the first one which I spoke is about the quality of the egg and the sperm. So next that I'm going to talk is about the embryo. So what is this embryo? As I said, when you inject one sperm into one egg, then the embryo is formed. So how it is formed? Like it forms it is grown in the labs over 3 to 5 days. So once it gets fertilized, it grows up to day 2, day 3. Like first day it is 2 cell, then next day it becomes 4 cell, then the next day or the third day it becomes 8 cell. And then it keeps multiplying itself to form a blast, that is on day 5. So these all technical terminology is to decide the growth of the embryo. So embryo quality, we spoke about the quality of the eggs and the sperms, which is really important for the successful IVF pregnancy. So now it is the quality of the embryo which is also very important to get successful IVF pregnancy. So when we talk about embryo, so if it gets fertilized, then it is good. Then if it goes ahead but it gets arrested on day 2 or day 3, like as I said, while division of these cells, it gets arrested and there is no further growth. So if there is no further growth of that embryo, then you cannot be, it cannot be transferred into the uterine cavity. Or sometimes it grows up to day 3, that is, it grows up to 8 cell stage, and then it fails to grow further to up till day 5 in the lab. So again, if it fails to grow, there is no embryo left to transfer to the IVF. But again, there is even grading of these embryos. You grade these embryos like poor quality embryos, good quality embryos, or very good quality embryos. So if the quality of the embryo is really very nice, it gets implanted easily and then it increases the success rate of the IVF pregnancy. Now after this, there is something third important factor which is really important for the success rates of IVF pregnancy. So that is the endometrial lining or the uterine cavity lining. So the endometrium or the inner line of the uterine cavity is actually this. So this is the uterus, this is the fallopian tube, and these are the ovaries. So where we are actually going to transfer the embryos is inside the uterine cavity, which is called as endometrium or simply the inner lining of the uterine cavity. So if this inner lining of the uterine cavity is not well developed, or if it fails to grow to certain extent, which is optimally required for the transplantation of this embryo over here. So if it fails to grow, or if the receptivity, that is the receptivity of this is less. So what do you understand by receptivity? There should be proper circulation inside the uterine cavity so that it can hold the embryo and the pregnancy gets continued. So if the receptivity is good, or if the endometrium fails to grow, then again the success rate of IVF pregnancy comes down. So there are other factors other than these three factors which I mentioned, like the hormonal imbalance. Hormones also play a very important role to get a successful IVF pregnancy. Like there is thyroid, prolactin and various other endocrines. If they are disturbed in both the partners, either male or female, then again the successful rate of IVF pregnancy comes down. So by this we understand that it is just not the age that matters in IVF pregnancy. So other than these main factors and the endocrinology, there are certain minimal factors which is also important for the success rates of IVF pregnancy, like the lab. That is, the IVF lab has to be maintained well, and the technique of embryo transfer, it has to be done at only level 3 clinics with very skillful doctors. And the technique, that's why the technique is very important. And also the embryologist who is working on these sperms and eggs to get it fertilized. So these are certain minimal factors which are responsible for the IVF successful rates, IVF pregnancy successful rates. But the most important factors are the three above, which I've already mentioned. That is the quality of eggs and quality of the sperms, because if the quality of egg in female and quality of sperm in male is good, then the fertilization occurs, and also it grows to the next stage of the embryo, like day 2, day 3, it grows well in the lab. And then that's how the quality of embryo also is very important, because even if it gets fertilized, it has to grow and it should be a very good quality embryos. And then the third point, which I also mentioned earlier, which is very important, is the endometrial lining, or the inner lining of the uterine cavity where these embryos have to be faced. So all these things, all these factors are really important for the successful rate of this IVF pregnancy, and that is why the rates of IVF pregnancy is actually quite low. And I wish that every couple who is undergoing an IVF treatment should know that the success rates of IVF pregnancy is actually not 100%, and it varies with each individual depending on the factors that are actually responsible for the success rates. Because the same individual, like for example, an individual XYZ might have a very high success rates because her quality and endometrial lining could be very good, or even the sperm quality could be very good. But again, another category or another individual, ABC or another XYZ individual's quality could be very less, leading to lesser successful rates in spite of those, both the couples being of the same age. So individually, the success rates of IVF pregnancy varies, and that is why everyone should know what are the success rates of an IVF pregnancy before they undergo IVF treatment. Thank you.